My job is to give a short introduction to Patrick Henry and to let you know what was happening in the colonies 236 years ago that caused him to make this famous speech. And then after he makes his speech, I'll come back and tell you what happened as a result of him making his famous speech. So how many of you remember taking high school history and learning about Patrick Henry in high school and his famous speech, right? Well, it's a miracle. He's come back through time and he's here today. So without further ado, I'll just proceed. Forgive me for reading my notes. This afternoon, Patrick Henry reaches across the Gulf of Time to ignite the fires of liberty that reside in the hearts of every true American patriot. In a few minutes, we will join the great patriot as he delivers his famous speech that changed the course of American history. The speech, A Call to Arms, was delivered on March 23, 1775 at the Second Virginia Convention in St. John's Church at Richmond, in support of Mr. Henry's proposed resolution to raise a militia and put the colony in a posture of defense. It is important to understand the circumstances in which this speech was given in order to appreciate what a huge challenge it was to alter the course of the convention and how critical was the situation facing the colonies. Relations between the colonies and Great Britain had been deteriorating for over 10 years. The Stamp Act, the Townshend Act, and the residual tea tax raised tensions to a very high level. Lord Dunmore had dissolved the House of Burgess. I think it's on too loud. Lord Dunmore had dissolved the House of Burgess and forbade them to meet, hence the reason for the second convention being held in Richmond instead of Williamsburg. The Boston Massacre had occurred 5 years earlier, and Boston had been occupied thereafter. The Boston Tea Party had occurred less than 2 years earlier, and the coercive acts had closed the port of Boston a few months later. British warships were harassing colonial shipping interests off the coast of Virginia, and there were rumors that Hessian soldiers were already en route to help suppress the rebellious colonists. It was apparent that Great Britain was dramatically increasing its military presence both on the land and on the sea. She had lost patience with the rebellious colonies and was assuming a much more belligerent posture. Patrick Henry was well aware of the rapid escalating situation and strongly believed that, given a little more time, Great Britain would gain a decisive strategic advantage over the colonies by disarming, occupying, and blockading them. His task was to convince the rest of the delegates to the convention of the necessity for a militia and a defensive posture for the colonies. And herein lay the problem. The majority of the delegates were wealthy tidewater planters who depended on trade with England for economic survival. They saw Henry's resolution as a provocation to Parliament and the Crown. To compound Henry's problem, he was generally looked down on by the more genteel planters. His status as a delegate from the interior county of Hanover was indeed a serious handicap. The task of convincing the Tidewater delegates to vote against their own economic interest would be no small feat. In fact, influential delegates had already made firm arguments to send yet another delegation and petition to England to try and persuade the ministry and Parliament to grant relief to their grievances. Patrick Henry realized that if this political ploy proved successful, Great Britain would have the opportunity to gain an overwhelming military advantage as a result of the delay. It is against this backdrop of eminent peril and a nearly impossible political situation that Patrick Henry gave the speech that changed the course of history and created the legacy we call the United States of America. We join Mr. Henry now as he is about to address the delegates in St. John's Church.
Mr. President, no man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights. And therefore, I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do, opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. And in proportion to the magnitude of the subject, ought to be the freedom of the debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to learn the truth and to fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time for fear of giving offense? I should consider myself as guilty of treason toward my country and an act of disloyalty to the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, it is natural for man to indulge in illusions of hope. We're apt to shut our eyes against the painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. Is this the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who having eyes but see not, and having ears but hear not, those things which so nearly concern their temporal salvation? For my part, no matter what anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging the future, but by the past. And judging by the past, I wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the past 10 years to justify those hopes with which gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves in the House. Is it that insidious style with which our petition has been lately received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare to your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourself how this gracious reception of our petition comports with the warlike preparations which cover our seas and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation. The last arguments to which kings resort. I ask gentlemen, what means this martial array? If its purpose be not to force us to submission, can gentlemen assign any other possible motive to it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for all this accumulation of navies and armies? No, sir. She has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They are sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains that the British ministry has been so long forging. And what have we to oppose them? Shall we try argument? Sir, we have been trying that for the past 10 years. Have we anything new to offer upon the subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up to every light of which it is capable, but it has been all in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplication? What terms shall we find which have not already been exhausted? Let us not, sir, I beseech you, deceive ourselves. We have done everything that can be done to avert the storm that is now coming on. We have petitioned. We have remonstrated. We have supplicated. We have prostrated ourselves before the throne and implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament.